Good morning. I'm Dave DeStore. And we are with the firm is currently Jensen and Halstead. Connie asked us to do just a little bit of background on the history of the firm, and then we'll focus on a little bit more on Scottish Home and its designer, William Bryce Lundy. And then if we have time, we'll show what the firm's been up to. We are celebrating our 151st year this year. Oldest firm in Chicago, and according to Wikipedia, third oldest in the country. So, good tradition. And the firm was originally started with William Bergeni, along with Mr. Loring, back in 1868. Very fortuitous timing, 3 years before the Great Chicago Fire. Jenny is recognized as one of the leaders of the Chicago School of Architecture. Other notables in there from the Chicago School of Daniel Burnham. We'll go through a couple more later on. And then other architects, James Gamble Rogers. Mr. Rogers was known for his designs for the campuses of Yale, Cambridge, and Northwestern. Jenny originally was the engineer for the Chicago West Parks, so Douglas Park, Garfield Park, and Humboldt Park, and did the designs for the field houses, the stables, which led to his commission to be the implementer of the general plan for Riverside. Here, right next to some of the stuff that's no longer there, the Riverside Hotel. You should recognize the water tower. Jenny's home was in Riverside, and one of his future partners, Mr. Schemerhorn, his house is also in Riverside. So here's a beautiful shot. I don't know what it's going for, but go for it. It should be on the historic register, I believe. I'm not sure.
Yes, it is.
And also during this time period, again, those familiar with Chicago School, Burnham, Holabird, Roche were in there, and Holabird and Roche broke off and started their own firm that continues today as Holabird and Root. So again, one of the older firms in Chicago. In the early 70s, this is the type of buildings that the firm was building. This is Lighter 1. And then in 1884, the home insurance building was designed by Jenny. And anybody other than John, anybody know this is one of the most famous skyscrapers in the world? Anybody know why?
Well, the first was steel.
Yeah, the claim is it's the first steel skyscraper ever done. And before that time, if anybody's familiar with the Monadnock building downtown, not quite as tall. The walls at the base are 8 feet thick, just in order to be able to support the structure. And you've got small windows. It was hard to get natural light in. With the new construction, the facade was much thinner and much more natural light. And that is right about the time when William Bryce died.
William Bryce Lundy, he started at the firm at the age of 21. This is exactly the time when the home insurance building was in progress. So I think of it as his first impression and introduction to the firm and continued this tradition. So here, it's probably a little slow for you to read a few bullet points of his life. It's hard to find information on Lundy and his personal life. We know a lot of information on the buildings he worked on, but not his personal life as much. So he was born in Canada, in Hamilton, Ontario, in 1863, in April. He is of Scotch descent, but you already knew that. From the clan Fraser. Both of his parents were born in Scotland. He was the first born in Canada. And he moved to Canada in 1884 and immediately started working, Chicago, immediately started working for Jenny. He worked previously only 4 years in architecture in Canada, also to a prominent architect. His name, I think, is also William. There's a lot of Williams. Charles Mulligan. And so he was an apprentice for him for 4. Lundy's often thought of as working under Jenny's shadow. I think that's only because Jenny was louder. So I really do, because Mundy received multiple awards at the very young age. He was probably about 23 at the time when he received the silver medal from the Architectural League of New York, which you may not think, okay, fine, it's a draft contest, pretty drawing, he won the silver medal. What was very important about that was that at the time, the architects on that side of the state had their nose up in the air at those considered Western architects. And the two top prizes for that contest were taken by Western architects. So yeah, so he won a silver medal for a contest held in New York, and he wasn't 25 yet. We actually have a little article on that coming up soon. He also won the Clark Gold Medal in '89 and the bronze medal for the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. He became partner of the firm in '91. That was only 7 years after he joined, so he wasn't even 30 years old yet when he became full partner with Jenny. Then he was also very involved with the American Institute of Architects. He became a fellow in '92. He was vice president in '06 and also in '07. He held both positions, first and second. And he was the architect for the Chicago Board of Ed for many years, from 1998 to '04, and eventually he quit because of the politics, but he claimed it was due to health reasons. And he died until he died still working at Jenny. He never retired, very passionate. So this is hard to read, but I'll read this to you. This is from his young years. Successful young architects. W.B. Mundy, a promising young architect of this city, has just been awarded second prize in the medal contest for drawings by the Architectural League of New York. Several weeks ago, the League sent circulars through the country inviting draftsmen under 25 years of age to submit designs of a memorial clock and bell tower on a village screen. 2 medals, 1 gold and 1 silver, were offered as prizes to be awarded by an unprejudiced judge. The object of the contest was to promote good drawing and designing among young men, and hundreds of drawings were sent to the League. The entire collection was placed on exhibition at the Fifth Avenue Art Galleries. As Eastern architects have always sneered at their Western brethren, it will probably gall them to learn that both prizes have been captured by Western architects.
Also, while Mundy was there, those of you familiar with the downtown clubs, the Union League Club was done under Jenny Schemmerhorn and Bogart. And later on, we got to redo it again. Brought this one down and put it up new again. During that time, also, a number of residences were done. This is a rendering for a dining room on Michigan Avenue. William Otis joined the firm at about that point in time also. And again, some of the old houses, this one's a residence on Astor Street in Chicago, which is in the Lincoln Park area, just a gorgeous neighborhood. Again, landmark status. As Lupe mentioned, in 1891, Mundy was promoted as Jenny's partner. And as far as I can tell, he is the youngest partner in the 151 years of the firm. Again, this time frame, the commissions are getting larger. The Fair department store, which is no longer around. The Manhattan Building, which gained great fame in the 1990s in a Chevy Cavalier commercial. Ludington Building that's on South Wabash, again, landmark status and still standing. The Leiter 2 building, in 1872, we did the Leiter 1 building. In 1891, the Leiter 2, which is better known to the current generation as the Sears and Roebuck down on State Street. Probably some of my favorite architecture of all time is the Columbian Exposition of 1893, the horticultural building. This was a bronze winner for design back then. Just massive soaring glass, huge building, and the renderings and paintings from there. The Spectatorium, also at the exposition. This was going to be the world's largest auditorium at the time, with a grand total budget of $550,000, which is astronomical for the time. It got to the $550,000 point. It wasn't finished. The entire project fell apart. Today it would be a lawsuit for decades. Back into the highlights, the Dearborn Building, New York Life. You can see the steel structure going up with very thin skin that allowed for the time. So this was all etched back in the day. More the New York Life building, and a rendering of a building that never did get built, but paid homage to leaving the original New York Life building in place. And then schools were very big. As Lupe mentioned, he was the architect for Chicago Board of Education. And Lupe, there's something very special about this school, if you want to share.
Sure, so in reading about the school, I found out that this is actually on 40th, is it Pershing? So 244 East Pershing, that is east of State Street. So that neighborhood at the time when the school opened was integrated. And this is early, this is 1904, and this school was attended by anyone and everyone at the time. And it wasn't until later in the 40s and 50s that it became segregated. And this was one of the things that that Mundy was trying to promote schools, and I can assume part of the conflict and the reason he left eventually.
Stuff outside the state of Illinois. This is actually the Illinois State Memorial at the Vicksburg Military Museum, which is a huge park down in Mississippi. Vicksburg, yeah. The Battle of Vicksburg. And there's a huge memorial down there for Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Again, on Michigan Avenue, if you're down by Symphony Center, the Art Institute is this teeny little building in there. That was another one. And in 1907, Mr. Jenny passed away. And Elmer Jensen, who came in at the age of 14, I believe, or 16, as the office boy, was now Mundy's partner. And the interesting fact is, the other senior partner at our firm right now, Francisco Rosas, also started as the office boy way back in the day, and he is now one of our senior partners.
And he was 19.
Yes. The Mundy and Jensen era was Motor Road on South Michigan Avenue was popping up. There was a lot of work being done down in that area, for that area, all the new car dealerships. And you can kind of see the old cars sitting in there back from the 1910s. And then in 1907.
1910. Yeah, so the photo on the left here is physician John A. McGill. And he's the one that donated the land we're standing in today, 5 acres, for the purpose of building this building. I think at the time it was thought of just a home for the elderly. And then the picture on the right has Mundy in the middle with the building committee. He's holding the drawings. And this is a photo of the building, the original building. This is in 1910, it's still in construction. What we see here on the left is an article announcing a fundraiser for this building. And the article, I'll read a little bit of it. It's an announcement for a Halloween party for the Will County Caledonian Society. They will hold a big indoor picnic in the Castle Hall where an elaborate program will be handled. There will be special out-of-town Scottish singers. As yet, the program has not been fully prepared. Justice McCullough is the chairman of the committee, consisting of Barrowman, McKinsey, Kelly, and Grant. Attend housewarming. At the celebration, they will probably select representatives to attend an opening of the Scottish Old People's Home at Riverside, November 5th. This home has recently been completed by the Scottish people at a cost of about $30,000. It will be a housewarming celebration, and the institution will be formally turned over to the Illinois Senator Society, which is the oldest charitable institution in Illinois. The institution has been built for the accommodation of 26 inmates, with provisions for additions to the structure as required. At present, there will be but 11 old persons in the home. The St. Andrew Society is endeavoring to raise an endowment fund of $75,000, $21,000 of which already has been subscribed. Not a plan. The Joliet Society will also raise what money they can to help pay off the debt. The society here, however, is not a clan, but a Caledonian, the organization of the latter being not for charitable purposes, but for social entertainment. The clans throughout the state have charge of the charitable funds. And then we have photos of some of the early residents of this facility. I think some of these are on your website. So this is a small history of elder care. So what struck me about the last article that I read to you is the reference to inmates, for example, old people. I'm quoting, right? You know this.
Don't believe her.
So what we have up here, I started the timeline in 1823. So in 1823, one of the first homes for the aged opened in the U.S. This was in Philadelphia, and I believe it was for women. In 1906, Alzheimer's is first described. And this is the first time I realized it's someone's last name. So that was a German psychiatrist. In 1909, the term geriatrics is coined by an Austrian doctor, Ignaz Nescher. Is that him? And in 1910, this building gets built. Only a year after the term geriatrics came to life. But then it wasn't until 1935 that Social Security passes as part of the New Deal. Medicare and Medicaid were instituted in 1965. Again, another big gap. And in 1974, the first hospice in the U.S. opens. In 1981, the first assisted living facility, or the first assisted living facility recognized as such, opens in the U.S. In 2010 is when the baby boom silver tsunami was expected. At that time. 40 million Americans are 40 plus. That was 2010. In 2013, and this one is hilarious, Chinese law, children must visit their elderly parents. And
Good law.
you know, and before all these homes were open, it was people that didn't have the means or the family support were in poorhouses. So we've come a long way. This is an article about the fire that happened in 1917, and it was in March 18. It was a Sunday. The article goes on to describe that 4 people perished in the flames, 3 men, 1 woman, the woman being on the floor, staying with her husband in the same room. And they describe alarms going off, and the superintendents, I think is the name they give, the women, the caretakers, ran around closing all the fire doors, which just hurts because that doesn't happen now. And then they woke everyone up, and of course everyone moved a little slow, and so they lost 4 people. They also described people trying and leaving to go back to retrieve objects, trinkets. And then when the fire department arrived, their hose was 1,000 feet too short. So the nearest fire hydrant was 2,000 feet away, and their hose was only 1,000 feet long. So we rebuilt. This is a photograph of the new building, the entrance, if you know it. This is the existing building. The earliest photos we have. It was rebuilt in, I think, 6 months later, same year. Project for which Mundy donated his feedback to the organization. So these guys were gardeners on the property, 1921. John Bell and John Reed, ages, I believe, 82, 92, and 87. And they were caretakers of the grounds here, Scottish men. And I won't read the whole thing, but both of them formerly worked for nobility in Great Britain. They both met Queen Victoria personally. One of them remembers Queen Victoria losing her poodle dog when she was a young lady. Mr. Reed recovered the dog, and the Queen gave him a shilling. And when interviewing them, or trying to, the reporter couldn't get a word out of them. But the superintendent of the home said, they're both good workers and real Scotchmen. And then just newer photos of residents. You can tell by the skirts, right? The skirt length. So I'm judging at this point 50s. And this photograph, we showed you the one on the left earlier, but I like to compare these side to side. It's the same room. Slightly different angle, and a little hard to see because the one is in black and white, but you can see the doorway here, the dark French doors in the back are the same white ones I think in this one, and what is now a bookshelf. Was that glass doors on that one? It might have been a bookshelf as well. And the building as you know it.
Kind of moving on with Mundy's legacy. As we mentioned before, the first Union League Club was designed by Mundy. He got a chance to take it down and redo it again in 1926. That building stands today, and a lot of it is still original inside, if anybody's been in there. A beautiful old building. This is down on Madison Street at 2400 West by Western. It was originally the Westtown State Bank. Wintrust is now in there, so at least it stayed true to its banking roots. And different designs of the building and how it was built. And again, I believe this one has landmark status. And it looks pretty original to way back then. What I love in there is Western Avenue was known for its streetcar, no longer around. Kept a perfect shot in there. In 1936, Bork and Havens were named partners in the firm. And then in 1938, the Kraft Building, which was down on Peshtigo Court, which is now a high-rise condo building, it was torn down in 2002. Kind of in the, can't think of the name, but not far off of the Navy Pier. And then in 1939, Mr. Bryce passes away. He was a very staunch supporter of any claim to the first steel skyscraper. And in one of the obits, it says in here, he battled to defend Chicago's claim to priority as the sense of the first skyscraper. He risked his life climbing on ledges at the advanced stage to make his own photographs revealing the actual construction employed in the building, not the home insurance building, that was being publicized as the first skyscraper. This was done when the rival structure was being raised. He wrote a history of building tracing the evolution of the skyscraper. It is an ironical fact that the significant manuscript has never yet been published. And the part that I really like, the last paragraph, is loyal to his city, his profession, and his associate. Mr. Mundy continued to toil in his office at his book and in other matters, even after a severe accident that severely injured his back. He was a builder, a fighter, a champion of truth. One occasionally wonders if the present generation of leaners, whiners, and deconstructionists will ever produce a man one half as sturdy and as strong in character. And I get it today. Everybody keeps talking about that younger generation. Wow. Even back then. Even after his death, when Bork and company left, Elmer Jensen kept the money name. They continued on. This is a boys club that was on Willow Street down in the city, which is now very pricey row houses. It's a one-block development. They did a lot of schoolwork, so additions to the parish school in Lombard, and such as that. We don't have any photographs of that. Did a fair amount of church work also in the 50s and 60s. St. Paul's Lutheran in Melrose Park, right on Lake Street. The School of Nursing at Oak Park Hospital was done back in the 1950s. And the Alice Miller Chapel at Northwestern. One of the architects who designed this, Ivan Childs, is going to be celebrating his 90th birthday this year. And one of his favorite buildings he's ever designed. And so the inside, at the time, the organ was $100,000 back then. It's a beautiful pipe organ. In the late 60s, Charlie Rummel joined the firm. He had many contacts at Cook County. As you can see, some facade restorations, council chambers, county president's office. A number of projects were done there until about the mid-90s. And when Charlie left, the name reverted back to Jensen Halstead. I think we missed a slide in there. I think it was 1954, 56, when it became Jensen and Halstead, when Ed Halstead joined the firm. Now the firm does a lot of healthcare, which is hospitals, and senior living are two main things. This is the main hospital at Oak Park. The patient rooms of the time, and take a look at the operating room. Pay attention to that. I'll show you something more modern. In the 1980s and early 90s, healthcare was going from being kind of a plain Jane building to it's a cancer center at Alexian Brothers, creating some nicer spaces as there's been evidence-based design that nicer spaces help with the healing and getting better. Some fun stuff is the heliport for Loyola University Medical Center, which is a trauma 1 center, was done back then. And dementia units really started coming into vogue in the 90s. And as people understood that special care needed to be done, this became one of the specialties of the firm. Can anybody tell me where the elevators are in this? No. Disguised with the renderings. Within there, the only way on and off that unit is through the elevators, and people used to try to escape all the time. So put a beautiful scene on there, and they would forget that there was the elevator. Hospitals, this is a surgical and bed tower addition at Riverside Medical Center in Kankakee. Another addition on St. Joseph Hospital in Joliet. Again, Joliet area is where a lot of funding for this came from, for Scottish Home. Slightly more modern on the operating rooms these days compared to the 1960s. Again, carrying through dementia care. This is for Silverado Senior Living. It's considered probably the gold standard of dementia care in the U.S. This building is in Naperville. Medical office buildings, again, medicine is catering more on the retail level. The waiting area to go see your doctor, things are getting nicer and nicer. Again, more dementia buildings and bring us right to the more current day building that opened last year is the Carrington up in Lincolnwood. It is a sprawling 500,000 square foot building. I guess bigger is better these days. With a beautiful view of the Chicago skyline. Those units on the south went really fast. And, compared to the rooms there, again, bigger is better these days. That is the end. Anybody have any questions?
Wow.
You've been involved in any of these designs, one of you?
Yeah, I mean, the last slides, I've been with the firm since 1993. So I did the vast majority of the planning for all of our projects through the 90s and got more planners. But I think everything covers. Yeah. I think I've worked on all of these, not so much on this. I was on the periphery
I
of
did
this
that.
one.
I did that.
Yeah, Lupe did that one, yes. So, Lupe did this one also. I was on the periphery of that one. I was the lead for this big edition. And I was the architect for this. And it was new enough at the time when we did this that Presbyterian Homes actually hired an outside consultant who studied dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And we did several sessions working with her to understand what the disease was about and the best studies at the time and how to deal with that and how the built environment could help with the progression of the disease. And again, we carried that on with Silverado. If anybody gets a chance to go up to their building in St. Charles, it's just a lot of natural light, very home-like. There's 90 beds. You had mentioned you like the greenhouse model. This is like greenhouse on steroids. There's 90 residents in there, but it's designed in such a way that it feels more like a home. Lots of natural lights. They're involved in studies in the University of California, Davis. The effects of the natural light on both depression and circadian rhythms. The more natural light you can bring in, depression scores, since Silverado has a number of buildings, they were used as a control. And residents who were exposed to between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. only, close to windows or outdoors, their depression scores went from 6s and 7s down to 3 and 4s with no medication. They also found that with the circadian rhythms and your sleep patterns, those who were exposed to just those 2 hours of natural light during the day, their sleep patterns were better. And the study just came out last year, it was published. Those are the things we follow very closely these days because both in senior care and healthcare, there's a lot of research being done on ways to extend people's life, make their life better, help them heal. It's where the industry's going.
Good.
Is your practice only in Illinois or Councilor?
We're based in Illinois. The healthcare practice is more about a 250 mile radius of Chicago. The senior living, we go all over. We've got a half dozen buildings in Texas, Rhode Island. We've done stuff in Iowa, looked at things in Colorado, Oklahoma. So senior living, we go around with our clients that are national. They like us, so they take us places.